25,000 professors, that's 25K, sign a petition arguing that American citizenship doesn't mean anything. It's not real. It's really more of a technicality. 25 million Americans reply that your PhDs aren't worth the damn paper they're written on. Time to start importing Mexican professors. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hola, gringos and gringas, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start by discussing the value of being an American citizen. Millions, and let me repeat, millions and millions and millions of people are trying to get here to earn the benefits of American citizenry. And your educated PhD-holding academic class has now said, I don't know what the big fuss is, because American citizenship is only a turn of phrase. It doesn't really mean anything. And I would say to those professors, all right, fine. If you actually believe that being an American citizen doesn't do anything for anybody, that the Constitution is just an old rag that needs to be superseded, that all of our laws and procedures and all of our opportunities have nothing to do with our uniqueness as Americans or the founding or the nature of our republic, if that's all true, then maybe we should start taking away your freedom. If you're the ones telling us as professors that Americanism doesn't mean anything, well, maybe we'll take your speech away. What if we take your right to free assembly away? What if we take away your religious freedoms or your freedoms not to be religious? What if we become the nation you pretend we are? You deny us. You don't believe that American citizen means anything. You think that anybody in the world's entitled to come here. You teach your kids at universities that every other culture in the history of the world is a better culture, a more moral culture than our culture. And if you're all saying that while having tenured sinecures in major universities where you can't get fired, maybe we ought to take you at your word and take away your freedoms. How would you like that, professorial class? I can tell you what they would do. They would whine like little biatches.
So you're telling me you're not one of the 25,000?
No, I am not one of the 25,000.
Okay. Well, it was actually more than 25,000, but then they basically stopped it because it's like they had enough. They didn't need it. But according to the actual petition, it says, we as educators reject the artificial distinction between foreign and domestic students, which undermines the pursuit of both knowledge and justice. And that statement alone,
let that ring in your ears.
Says everything.
It's between foreign and domestic is a artificial thing, right? So if that's the case, and there's no difference between America and anybody else, why are you blaming us for the world's problems? If our culture is their culture and their culture is our culture, aren't they all guilty of what we're guilty of? Or is it one of these situations where, while there's no distinction between our American culture and the rest of the world, only our American culture can be blamed for the evils of the world and not... See, you got yourself in a problem. Because the minute you say that, whites alone are guilty, or Europeans, or Eurocentrism, or Western culture is responsible. How could you do that when you've just argued that those decisions are arbitrary? You are flailing hypocrites. So there's a big difference between America and the rest of the world when it comes to slavery and oppression and tyranny and sexism and bigotry and homophobia. But when it comes to enjoying the wealth and the resources and all the wonderful things that come from being an American, there is no distinction. I mean, seriously, how you people keep your jobs in supposedly buildings built for higher critical understanding eludes me, because you are some of the most vapid, shallow, completely inconsistent people I've ever met. I'll go one step further. The most racist people I have ever met are university professors. Let me underline that. And it's not even close. You're the ones who see everything in terms of race. You're the ones who insist that certain races are guilty by the color of their skin and cannot be guilty without that. You are the ones who say that. You are the bigots pretending to be wise, enlightened people.
Yeah. I just kept thinking the whole time that, we are the world. We are the ones. We are the future.
All those rich Hollywood celebrities singing about we're as poor as everybody else. Exactly. We are the children. No, you're not. You're rich Hollywood celebrities. Michael Jackson, we are the children. You're the ones touching those kids up rather than helping them.
Well, he's dead now. So anyway, Kevin Lynn, who's the founder of U.S. Tech Workers, which is a grassroots lobbying group, said if their view, the professor's view, that is, if their view is to serve foreign students in the same manner that they serve American students, well, we need to look at the amount of taxes that the average American is asked to fork over to them.
Right.
Nice
Who's
job.
paying for it?
Exactly.
Right? So when we start getting huge property taxes, we have foreign governments taxing their own families to send us money to put their kids into our school systems. Hurrah, huzzah.
Huzzah!
Of course, that would be, and you see what this is, right?
Exactly.
It's globalism on leftist terms.
Well, yes.
Right?
And knowing that there are the 25,000 plus of these professors, they're trying to speak up for the about 500,000 foreign students and graduates that are approved every year for the optional
Approval? How dare approval be necessary?
Optional practical training and curricular practical training programs. The foreigners then get federal work permits and are hired by American and foreign managers at Silicon Valley elite firms, which we know, Fortune 500 companies, networks of subcontractor firms that serve these Fortune 500 companies, and an additional 25,000 graduates get H-1B work permits, jobs, and a path to citizenship. But if we don't need citizenship, they can just not even have the path anymore because who cares?
Yeah, and meanwhile, there's no guarantee for kids spending $40,000 a year on tuition to get a job. There's no guarantees.
You mean
there.
the ones who were born here?
The ones who were born here. The ones who were born here don't get any guarantees, right? We bring you over here from India with an H-1 visa, and we give you an education, or if you have an education already, we guarantee you a path to citizenship and a job
in Silicon
if
Valley,
you're not an American. Mm-hmm. And so this is globalism on This is globalism on progressive terms. What does that mean? That simply means that the globalists decide that everything that the West has built and made for itself belongs to the world. But only the West, so everyone's entitled to these things, but only the West has to pay for it. That's globalism on progressive terms.
The quirky stories are always the most fun stories. This story is coming out of University of North Texas, which the university, they have a lot of student groups, just like every campus does. But apparently people who are practicing witchcraft have joined with the liberal student groups at the campus to take out one conservative student organization. And of course, that's the Young Conservatives of Texas. The College Democrats, the LGBT group, UNT GLAD, and Chicanic/Latin group called, I don't know if it's Muev, wrote a petition. Mueve. See, I don't speak.
I think
language. Anywho, I know German. All right, they wrote a petition because that's all we do. Write petitions on change.org, and the petition was addressed to the university president Neil Smatresk, signed by more than 2,700 people. It says that YCT, the Young Conservatives of Texas, has shown a pattern of racism, transphobia, and homophobia throughout the 2019 through the 2020 school year. And they go on to cite examples about what they have deemed to be objectionable behavior by this group. So basically, all these student groups got together because they whine that there's this one student group that's picking on other people or just they're mean. That's what it sounds like. The petition stated that the group, the conservatives, trivialized the National Coming Out Day when they tweeted, "It's hashtag National Coming Out Day, so come to the Fountain Mall today at 12 p.m. to come out as a conservative and get snacks."
Right, literally, it's Coming Out Day, so come to the Fountain and we'll give you treats as conservatives. That's hostility.
How dare they? And basically that, means they dismissed all the LGBTQIPL plus star, asterisk,
I do not
all
see
of that.
anywhere in the Young Conservative statement that says you can't come out if you're gay.
No, yeah, see, because Coming Out Day only can mean that. You can't come out for anything else or out to anything
right.
else. That's
so
what it
again,
is.
these are celebrations of gayness where no non-gayness is allowed.
Yeah, so that means that other group, because they don't...
cultural appropriation.
They don't 100% support a different group's thing that they can't be a group. The petition also states that basically the YCT group had been removed back in 2005 for some hateful comments, and it was reinstalled this last year, and that was a huge mistake. That based on what happened 14 years ago by kids who were in elementary school at that time, they now must pay the punishment of what happened.
It's almost embarrassing. It's embarrassing to state the obvious here, because I'm sure you can figure this out. The big sin of the Young Conservatives of Texas is being Young Conservatives of Texas, right? That's your problem.
Oh, yeah.
There is no getting around that. By calling yourself Young Conservatives of Texas, you have offended them. You have bothered them. You think things that they don't like, and you shouldn't be allowed to think them. And the idea that witches have gotten involved.
Yes, I was going to say, this is where it gets fun.
Yeah, this is where it gets fun.
Witchcraft. So Anna Katz is a recent graduate of the university. She tweeted out a picture of a drawing of a goat captioned "The Devil and a Cauldron." And she later removed the tweet And basically, Katz informed Kelly Niedert, who's the chairman of the Young Conservatives chapter, that Katz would be performing a ritual with intentions of misfortune against Kelly, who's the chapter chairman. So these intentions of misfortune would come against her. But then she had to qualify her hex by explaining that it was not intended to induce physical harm.
Intentions of misfortune. So we want her life to get screwed up. She loses her job. She can't get hired. She's a homeless person. But no physical violence.
True.
Right?
But then
that makes it okay.
Yeah, exactly. And there were other tweets that were actually sent to the Young Conservatives that depicted images of menacing tarot cards, one of which shows an image of a death. So that's physical as well as...
Here's my question, if I can throw this out here. Can you imagine what the outcry at North Texas would be if a group of University of North Texas students were getting together at Christian meetings to pray for harm and to have Jesus smite these perverted sinners, right? To call angels down, to sodomize them with lances and pitchforks. Can you imagine what the outcry would be, what a perversion of religion this would be, what a misuse of religion this would be, how a horrible, bigoted, intolerant appropriation of the verities of Christianity would that be? And yet here you've got witchcraft and Satanism, and that they want to work malevolently on these conservative kids. And that's just interesting, quirky aspect of their religion. Boy, I mean, I guess if you're a witch, your religion is to hurt people, right? And by the way, who is it that's reinforcing the stereotypical image of the witch here? It's not the Christian kids. It's the witches, right? That the first thing you hear from them is, we're going to cast spells and hexes to punish these people who don't see things the way we do. So the next time you hear a witch bitch about her itch, about how it's not fair, how Christians have stigmatized witches down through the ages, just remember, when they pull out their little charmed wands and start putting goats and cauldrons and talking about the devil, that they're the ones who are stereotyping their religion, not us. And if they're going to do it, see, I'm confused. If witches are all about hexing people, am I as a Christian allowed to point that out? They're allowed to hex without any problems. But if I call out that the hex is dangerous, see, I'm a bigot now.
Well, we know we live in the age of Big Brother, and we have for a while, but we have some more Big Brother type actions happening. It's actually happening across the pond at British universities who are surrendering basically to the Chinese government and all their censorship. We're talking about 4 top Russell Group universities: King's College London, Queen Mary University of London, Southampton, and York. They're taking part in a pilot program, and it's going to allow Chinese students to study for British degrees online. Okay. And it's supposed to be without falling foul of the communist nation's internet censorship that blocks certain websites. So they're going to get these degrees online, but it's still going to fall in line with what is deemed appropriate for the Chinese government.
So in other words, these British universities have sold their souls to the Chinese. They're going to give Chinese kids living in China English degrees through online learning that do nothing to challenge realities in China. Right?
Yes, that is
in other
accurate,
words,
yes.
There will be no criticism of communism. There will be no criticism of socialism. There will be no labeling the virtues of Western culture. There will be no free speech. There will be no mention of the massacre in Tiananmen Square. There will be no mention. They'll get a lot of Islamic apology because that's what Westerns do, but not for the Uyghurs, who are 1 million strong. Oh, and we can't point out the fact of all those Chinese sweatshops making those fancy tennis shoes for NBA players who won't criticize the Chinese government, but will turn around and decimate their own country for being. If America's racist and LeBron's willing to wear a T-shirt that says so, but they're getting all this money, the NBA, from the sweatshops and the concentration camps of China, and can't be bothered to call them out, well, that's about right. That's about pretty much how it works in Western culture today. If you're a good progressive, you bend over and grab the ankles for all sorts of Chinese propaganda, and yet the very things that China's doing, you never call them out for, you project them on your own country.
It's true. Well, just so everyone's aware, in case you start seeing this on the internet, the Chinese internet company Alibaba Cloud.
Oh, geez.
So if you hear of Alibaba Cloud, run away. It's actually a subsidiary of Alibaba Group, which is headed by Jack Ma, who is one of the wealthiest men in the world.
So, I got to ask you real quick, Alibaba. Is that not a cultural appropriation? Is this like Alibaba and the 40 egg rolls? Is this what this is? Is this Alibaba, the Chinese guy, appropriating an Arabic? Is that what this is?
Well, Jack Ma, I don't know where Jack Ma is from. So the system that they have here works by only allowing access to resources that are controlled and specified by the university. The resources need to be on the security allow list, according to the main company that's doing it, meaning it would have to be approved by Beijing. So I'm trying to understand whose job is it in England to bow down to those in Beijing and say, please, sir, may I have another?
The answer is whoever's cashing those big fat red checks. That's who.
That's who it
and
is.
Let me go. Look, you guys are pikers. You progressive universities. You're so far behind the times. This happened 10 years ago already with the Roman Catholic Church. No. The Roman Catholic Church is letting the communists decide who gets to be a bishop or not. It's the Roman Catholic Church, not the Roman Catholic Church. It's the Chinese communists who decide who the next cardinals are going to be. It's the Chinese communists. And your Pope Francis, is perfectly okay with this, right? Hey, as long as they allow Roman Catholicism in China, we're more than willing to let that Roman Catholicism be dictated by communists. What would you expect from a Latin American liberation theology fever swamp pope? But get on the stick here, Europe, English universities. Look at the Catholic Church if you want a model of how to sell what it is you have out to the Chinese. And look, the Catholics are doing it without even getting paid for it. You're getting paid at least for doing this. The Roman Catholics are doing this all out of the goodness of their little commie hearts. So you got to get with the stick. Don't take any money for this. Just sell yourself out.
All right, let's take a little time for some real education. Painted in the early 16th century, between 1500 and 1535, Christ Carrying the Cross is a painting attributed to a follower of Hieronymus Bosch. Bosch is best known for his apocalyptic and surreal paintings, including the Garden of Earthly Delights. Today, the painting can be viewed in the Museum of Fine Arts in Ghent, Belgium.
And this is one of my favorite paintings. I actually have a copy of this hanging in my office here at Freedom Project. And if you take a look at the painting, this is, again, for a long time we thought this was Bosch, the studio of Bosch. Now we are pretty sure, most art historians agree that it's probably not Bosch, but a follower of Hieronymus Bosch. And if you've seen Bosch's paintings, you will never forget them. The Garden of Earthly Delights, the odd, bizarre, almost surreal imagery of those paintings. You don't quite have that here, but you have something close. There at the center of the picture is Jesus, and give us a close-up on that picture, Mike. There it is. You can see on the left there's Jesus. And you see Jesus Christ carrying the cross on his way to his crucifixion. You can see the crown of thorns. And the thing that you notice when you see Christ, he's surrounded there by soldiers. Those would be Roman soldiers. And you see his placid serenity, right? That this is a Christ who is mastered suffering. He's not a suffering Christ like we've seen in some examples of 16th century German expressionism. This is a serenely peaceful Christ who almost rises above the bodily torment. Meanwhile, look at the Romans. They are hideous, ghastly, pallid caricatures, right? In fact, if you step back for a second to the bigger image, you will see, with one exception, all the Jews and all the Romans who surround Christ. By the way, let's not forget, Christ himself was Jewish, right? That's a Jewish man carrying that cross right there. Christianity as a religion is in the process of being born. And it was Jews and Romans, the inheritors of Western culture, from the Hebraic to the Hellenic, the Romans and the Greeks and Jewish culture. And there they are all surrounding Christ in a mob. As you can see, that long shaft of the crucifix go right up to the top of the page. Everybody around him, with one exception, is a horrific caricature. Go back to the image we just looked at, Mike. And we've already mentioned the Roman soldiers. Now go to the next image. And there's the exception. There's St. Veronica. And you may recall that St. Veronica, also Jewish, went and wiped the face of the suffering Jesus to give him some relief. And as reward for her beauty and her charity to the Savior, the face of Christ was imprinted on that napkin. Go back to the previous one. You will see that she's carrying the cross, and there's Christ, the top of Christ's face. Every other creature in the image here is monstrous. The Jews who laugh, the Romans who laugh and scoff. I once was teaching at Oklahoma State University, and there was a Christian group on campus. It was pretty big. They had about 100 people come every week. And I was invited to do a guest speaking role, and I brought this painting to talk about. And this Christian group, as Christian groups are wont to do, were constantly reaching out to non-believers to try to get them to come to the meeting and maybe find out a little bit more in Christianity. Well, they invited once, he was a biology professor, a biology or chemistry professor, and this guy was a liberal. He didn't like Christianity, but he was really flattered to be asked. And so he was sitting there, and everybody fussed over him. Here's our one non-believer. This guy's a non-believer, and he came. And so I can remember him sitting there just kind of basking in his own uniqueness. I got to talking about the painting, and I gave pretty much an explanation, just like I gave it. And he immediately got mad at me, and he said, first question, how can you justify this anti-Semitism, he says. These people are all Jews, and they're all painted horribly, except for Christ. This is unbelievable. I know better. You're trying to sell anti-Semitism to me. This is why I'm suspect. I was really hesitant to come to these meetings, and now you've shown your true colors here. Go back to the painting here. I said to him, sir, there's Jesus at the center of the picture. He's Jewish. There's Veronica at the bottom left. She's Jewish. And look at the people. Go back to the next picture, Mike, the close-up. Those men in helmets, those are not Jews. They're Roman soldiers. In other words, everybody who is not Christ in Veronica is portrayed as a monster. So if you're calling it anti-Semitism, you're making a mistake. Because everybody, the implication, well, what Bosch is doing is he's painting sin. The sin that crucified Christ is all of our sins. That's why all of us, Jews and Romans, we are all portrayed as sinners and monsters. He said to me, that's nonsense, and you're an anti-Semite. That's how it ended. That's what happens when you try on a university campus to give perspective. You're an anti-Semite. So I apologize if you watched that picture, because evidently now you're all anti-Semites.
Okay, I guess. As always, you can follow us on Facebook and Parler. And if you have a question for our Friday Q&A, visit freedomproject.com/askduke or send us a message on social media. As a reminder, this is our final week of enrollment at Freedom Project Academy. Our phones and our email have been insane for about the last 6 weeks, and it's the last week of it. So our classes are nearly filled to capacity. If you want to enroll your kids in a Judeo-Christian online school that is safe and teaches them how to think, not what to think, you must enroll by Friday, July 24th. Visit freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com and start your enrollment today. Again, our very last day to enroll is this Friday, July 24th. Now, we're going to wrap things up with just a silly little fun fact. A single strand of spaghetti is called a spaghetto.
So does that mean a single ghetto is now known in plural as ghettai?
The ghettai?
Would that be right?
Potentially.
If a spaghetti, if one strand of spaghetti is a spaghetto, are multiple ghettos ghettais?
Ghettais.
That's the question. And that's our show for Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.